So Tomas Björkman, you're a former banker, social entrepreneur, and an author. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we are also very glad to have you with us. So tell me, to begin with, what inspired you to participate in the Spirit of Humanity Forum?
I think we are living in a very interesting time, to say the least, for humanity. I think we are going through a major transformation in society today. And to try to understand that transformation and also see how that relates to our inner worlds and the inner transformation that we can go through is for me very, very important. So I think that the transformation that the outer transformation, the transformation in society that we are right now seeing the beginning of, I think that is of the size, at least of the size of the transformation we had when we went from the pre-modern society, the old agricultural medieval society, going into the modern industrial world. That was a transition that completely changed not only the society, not only how we produce, not only our economy, but it actually changed our complete understanding of what it means to be human, our understanding of society, and also the relationship to and the understanding of the natural world. And of course, in that transition, say 200, 250, 300 years ago, we went from a mainly dogmatic religious way of looking at the world into a rational scientific way of looking at the world. And that way of seeing the world, I would say, has been hugely successful for humanity. That has given us everything that we know today of modern medicine, human rights, democracy, and a lot of things that we would never want to give up. But at the same time, I think that we can see the limitations today of that worldview, and that many, many of the problems that we see in the world today could be the environmental problem, it could be the economic problems, the economic injustice, it could be obesity crisis, psychological ill health crisis, and you name it. All of those crises, I think, are not really different crises. I think they are all symptoms of the same underlying meta-crisis, and that would be the fact that we have now reached the limit of this enlightenment, scientific, rationalistic way of understanding the world. And we need to explore new and complementary ways of understanding the world. And this forum, for me, is doing exactly that, and is putting the focus on, even in the name, we have the spirit, and we're talking about spirituality. I would talk about the mind and the consciousness and our inner world, our values, our subjectivity, and that we need again to realize the importance of those aspects of human existence. So that's why I'm here at the conference.
But you have an interesting story. I mean, you're a former banker.
Yes.
And now you have come to this place. And so tell me a little bit about your background and this evolvement of your life, becoming then this social entrepreneur and talking for social change through inner transformation.
Yeah. So, yes, I think I've always been, in my adult life, been an entrepreneur. I used to be a business entrepreneur. I started a number of different companies, IT, real estate, and in banking. So I have a drive to be out there in the world and to try to make a difference. But after I sold my banking business 10 years ago, I really wanted to focus on looking at this specific relationship between, as you just mentioned, our personal inner development and societal change. And that made me start my own foundation in Sweden, in Stockholm, called the Oak Island Foundation, Ekskäret, where we are really trying to, not only from a theoretical point of view, try to understand inner development and societal change, but also see how we can practically support inner development. So, for example, in the summers we have youth camps for adolescents, where they can start exploring a bit about themselves and the bigger questions around the world, society, nature, and the relationship between humans and society, and human and nature. And the reason why I did that and got curious in looking at the inner development and also on the societal side was really from my experience in the business world, where there is an understanding in business world and in executive education that perhaps the most important aspect of a good manager, and especially in this rapidly changing world that we are living in today, with all the complexity and uncertainty about where the world is going, we need managers that can sort of hold that complexity. And quite a lot of efforts in executive education is about helping managers to grow internally and grow their consciousness and grow their ability to hold and manage this complexity. So then I started to reflect about the fact that, okay, if we in business understands that the inner qualities of managers are so important, why are we not talking about these inner qualities and the importance of these inner qualities in society at large? And if we are focusing in the executive education on helping managers to be, for example, more open, to be able to see the world from more perspectives, to have a deeper sense-making, perhaps even finding their own inner moral compass and extending their compassion. Sort of skills like that are sometimes called transformative skills. We know in business that they are super important and becoming more and more important, not only for top management, but for every employee in a modern organization, where more and more decisions needs to be taken more closely to the action, because everything is moving so quick. So if we realize the importance of those kind of inner qualities or inner skills, why are we not talking about that when we're talking about school and education and society? Of course, that is among the most important things that we can give to young people today, especially since we do not know what the world will actually look like in 10 years or 20 years when they are out there and will try to look for a job.
And you asked the question, why aren't we talking about that? I mean, now you in your work, how do you feel that you are bridging those divides somehow? You talk about in the plenary this morning, this lack of connection. We've lost our connection with ourselves, with nature. So why is that? And how do you feel? How are you accomplishing in this mission of yours?
Yeah. So you could say that one of the reasons why we are not talking about the importance of the inner world is really that in the Enlightenment worldview that we are still living in, we look upon our mind as more or less a rational machine that is just supposed to be all ready and finished development when we are about 20 years old, and then we just expect it to be a functioning machine. And of course that is not the case. I mean, we are now in science seeing that, and in developmental psychology seeing that the best way to understand our mind is not as a machine, but more like a natural, organic developing system, even an organic self-organizing complex system that is under lifelong development, and given the right conditions and given the right challenges, can actually self-organize in more complex way and be able to see deeper patterns and understand the world in a deeper and more nuanced way. And you could use the language and then talk about consciousness development, and that's a language that we are comfortable using at this conference. But still, in the general discourse in society today, we are still in the old Enlightenment view of the mind as a machine, and we are a little bit uncomfortable talking about the development of the mind during adult years and of consciousness, lifelong consciousness development. And we need to start doing that. And I think, going back to the plenary this morning, I was also there talking about my latest book that I wrote together with my co-author Lena Andersson, The Nordic Secret, and explaining how we in the Nordic countries actually 150 years ago had a very deep understanding about our mind as a developing system and the importance of supporting this lifelong consciousness, not only with a few political or business leaders, but really on a large scale in Scandinavia. So 100 years ago, we had large-scale programs in Scandinavia for consciousness development, adult consciousness development, that when it was at its height 100 years ago, reached 10% of the population. So that was, of course, that had a huge impact on our societies and helped us to move from being the poorest countries in Europe to become happy and democratic industrial nations.
So, because you're talking about it, those were like centers where we practiced inner work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, would that be a solution today? Because when you say practicing inner work, and what would the solutions be? What can we do? What do you do to do that? I mean, what would your answers to that be? Would centers like this be some solution, or how should we do that on a personal level?
Yes. So in order to reach such a large part of the population, as we did in Scandinavia 100 years ago, we had to open a lot of centers. So as I mentioned, we had in Denmark 100 years ago 100 centers like this, in Norway 75, and in Sweden 150 centers, often out in nature, and where young adults could spend up to 6 months with the expressed goal of finding their inner compass, but also learning about the latest technological developments and given good tools to organize civil society, how to start an NGO, how to organize meetings, how to write articles and things like that. So this about finding your inner compass is still, according to contemporary developmental psychologists, perhaps the most important step that we as adults in our inner development can take, to go from being what one could call auto-directed to needing a external authority to relate to.
Have you managed that yourself?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so, and many people do that. I mean,
how did you do that?
It's not a difficult step, but unfortunately, not everyone takes that step. And again, according to these philosophers, the German idealist philosophers that all the Scandinavian political leaders and intellectuals were reading 100 and 150 years ago in Sweden, that is really the most important step as an adult in your development, to be able to become authors of your own life and not be dependent on an external authority like an authoritarian leader or a dogmatic religion or something like that. Really becoming in charge of your own life. But unfortunately, many people never do. And today we have had or during these days, we have many times used the metaphor of the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, and that transformation. And I would say that step is really that dramatic, because the center of your moral orientation shifts from being focused on, okay, what do my friends think, what is politically correct, what is expected from me, to really find your own compass. And as an anecdote there, on the cover of Lene's and my book, The Nordic Secret, we have a picture of Rosa Parks, the black American woman who refused to give up her seat on the bus in Alabama. And she has said in many interviews that what gave her the moral strength to know that she was doing the right thing, to not giving up the seat, even if the law of the land said that she was legally obliged to do that, was the fact that she had participated in activities in a retreat center like this, actually built in Tennessee on the model of the Scandinavian retreat centers, and that is called the Highlander Folk School. And that played an important part. The Highlander Folk played an important part in the civil rights movement. So there you can see how sort of internalizing your moral compass can have a huge effect on change in society.
So Thomas, you've actually already explained, I mean, what can each and every one of us do to be the change and make a change? Let's find their inner moral compass.
Yeah.
But if we just sum it up, we are here, I mean, the theme of the forum is discovering harmony in a world of difference, spiritual resilience in practice.
Yeah.
Could you sum that up in some words? I mean, how could we discover or rediscover harmony in a world of difference?
Yeah. Of course, that's...
it's a huge topic.
It's a huge topic.
Yes.
Extremely complicated.
Yeah.
But I think that we have had very many insights and perspectives given during these days. If I should give just my small, narrow perspective of that, I would go back to exactly what we were just talking about. And there's about the development of your worldview, development of your mind, developing your inner compass. Because many people today, if not all of us, feel this disharmony and feel that there are so many perspectives out there, so many values, so many competing interests and everything out there. So if you are still dependent on a external compass and external authorities and trying to find some guidance out there, then you will only see disharmony and you will feel torn in every direction. And in such a complex and complicated and disharmonious world, in order to feel any harmony, you need to find that harmony inside. And the stronger inner compass, the more you get grounded in yourself, the more harmony you can find. And I think the best way to create more harmony out there, even in such a complex world, is for more people, more persons, to be able to find the harmony within themselves. Because then we will all be able to relate to each other in deeper ways and help each other to hold the complexity of a rapidly developing society.
Thomas, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.